I think we can pretty much all agree that within a certain limit, there's pretty much no such thing as too much horsepower. And if you're anything like me, you probably don't have a massive pile of cash sitting around to go drop on a fancy sports car. So you're stuck trying to find the best performance deals possible. For that reason, we've compiled this list of the 10 best cars that you can buy that make over 400 horsepower, and they're all very cheap. I want to start this off by saying that yes, a lot of these cars on this list are very cheap to buy, but they are not cheap to maintain. Just something to keep in mind, especially with these German cars that depreciate very fastly. They're very cheap for a reason. With that being said, the Audi RS6 is a really good way to get into the 400 horsepower club for around $20,000. I just want to say this is probably the most expensive car on this list at around $20,000, so we're going to have cheaper options just a little bit later. The specific generation we're talking about is the C5 RS6, which outputs 450 horsepower from its 4.2 liter twin turbo V8. Depending on what you want to do with your car, the Quattro all-wheel drive system may or may not suit your needs. A lot of people want big power so they can slide around and have fun, and obviously that's something you can't really do with all-wheel drive. But if you just want a really fast car that launches really fast, the Quattro all-wheel drive system is absolutely awesome. Like I said a second ago, this is pretty much the most expensive car on the list, mostly because of its rarity in the US, and it's significantly more rare in Canada, so finding one of these might be a challenge. Either way, the RS6 is a great way to get into the 400 horsepower club for relatively cheap and have a massive amount of performance on tap. Next car on the list is the BMW E39 M5. Again, this car might be cheap to buy, but it might not be very cheap to maintain, so just keep that in mind. Interestingly enough, there's a lot of talk of the E39 M5 becoming a future classic and potentially going up in value with time, so it might be a good choice as a long-term investment, but you're here for performance. Technically, the E39 M5 shouldn't be on this list because it's not officially a 400 horsepower car, but since it outputs 394 horsepower, I think it's close enough to put it on this list. Plus, with a few built-on modifications, you can squeeze it past the 400 horsepower mark very easily. For a pretty clean, low-mileage E39 M5, you can end up dropping over $35,000. However, it's not too hard to find these cars anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. I even found some locally for as low as $8,000, however they weren't in very good condition. Next car on the list is the Cadillac CTS-V, and a lot of us know the CTS-V name, but it seems like a lot of people completely forget about the first generation CTS-V. Compared to the later CTS-Vs, this first generation is an absolute bargain, and you could find them anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000. While it might not be supercharged like the later CTS-Vs, the LS engine under the hood is pretty easy to get big power out of with a cam and some bolt-ons, or if you want to go forced induction, you can easily match the power of the newer forced induction CTS-Vs. One of the best parts of the CTS-V and the E39 M5 for that matter is the transmission options. While a lot of luxury performance cars in this range are stuck with an automatic transmission, the E39 M5 and the first generation CTS-V are available with manual transmissions. If you don't like throwing your own gears, the CTS-V or the E39 M5 might not be the car for you, but I know for me, I'd way rather have a manual transmission for a performance car, so this is definitely a better choice for me. Either way, the CTS-V is a great way to get into the 400 horsepower club. Next up on the list is the Dodge Charger SRT8. Overall, I don't think the Dodge Charger SRT8 is a good performance buy. I think the interior sucks. I think it doesn't handle very well. I think it's too heavy, but if you want 4 doors, Hemi power, and over 400 horsepower, this is pretty much the only way to go. Unfortunately, the SRT8 is only available with an automatic transmission. For the most part, the first generation Charger SRT8 can be found around the $20,000 mark, which is a little bit high compared to the other cars on the list, other than the Audi RS6. But again, if you want Hemi power, this is one of the best ways to go. Here we have yet another 4-door luxury performance car, E55 AMG. The really interesting thing about Mercedes from mid-2000s is how insanely fast they depreciate. The E55 AMG isn't as bad as some other models such as the C230, but regardless, what was once a $70,000 to $80,000 car can now be bought for as low as $10,000. Think about that. That car is only 10 years old and it lost almost all of its value in that short amount of time. That being said, there is a reason that these depreciate so fast, so just understand if you get into one of these, reliability might be an issue and fixing it can get very expensive in some situations. At the time that it came out, the 469 horsepower E55 AMG was just a hair slower than the Ferrari 575M Maranello F1 from 0 to 60, while also being $175,000 cheaper than the Ferrari. On top of that, it makes a massive 516 pound-feet of torque, which is more than any other car on this list. Unfortunately, this is another car that's only available with an automatic transmission. So if you want a manual transmission, this car is off the list for you. For anyone who hates four-door cars, the rest of the cars on this list are available in two-door configurations. 3 decades after Pontiac stopped the production of the GTO in 1974, they brought it back in 2004. When they brought it back, they just rebadged the Holden Monaro from Australia and just badged it as a GTO. Either way, it offers some serious performance with a great chassis, independent suspension all around, and a 6-speed manual transmission and an LS under the hood. Earlier GTOs were equipped with a 350 horsepower LS1, while the later GTOs were equipped with a 400 horsepower LS2. Either way you go, both LS engines make significantly more power than they do in stock form as soon as you add a cam and some bolt-on parts. Generally speaking, you can find a GTO for around $15,000. I've seen some as low as $10,000. I think it would be pretty much impossible to have a list of 400 horsepower cars without mentioning the Ford Mustang. Of course, there are going to be people who hate the Mustang for just being a Mustang. There's going to be people who think it handles awful, and there's going to be people who think that it's slow. But the Cobra Mustang is a different story. More specifically, the 03 to 04 Terminator Cobra has massive potential with the right modifications. The reason we chose to feature the 03-04 Cobra as opposed to any other cheap Mustang is the independent rear suspension and the supercharged 4.6 liter V8. This is another car which technically shouldn't be on the list since the advertised power is only 390 horsepower. But with a $350 or $400 pulley kit, you can increase the boost and easily get into the 400 horsepower club, even the 500 horsepower club, all with a supercharger pulley. If you want to get one of the 03-04 Cobras, now is the time to do it because they're likely to increase in value quite a bit with time. As of right now, you can find Terminator Cobras anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000 depending on the condition. This last car I wanted to throw in there, even though it doesn't make 400 horsepower, it offers huge performance for the money that you're spending, and that's the C5 Corvette. It's really lightweight, very balanced, and offers a lot of performance. In stock form, the LS1 under the hood is rated at only 350 horsepower. But again, it takes very little to get one of these GM LS engines to make significantly more power than they're rated at with a simple camshaft install and some bolt-on parts. You can find them anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, just like the rest of the cars on this list. Before you go raging down in the comments saying that none of these cars are cheap or some of these cars are lame, or that they don't make enough power, just know that there were a lot of cars that could have been on this list that weren't on this list. Cars like the E92 M3, the Camaro, the Jaguar S-Type R, a bunch of various AMG models, the later Ford Mustangs, these are all cars which could have been on this list, but I didn't add them to this list because the cars that I put on the list are what I perceive to be the best value if you want to get over 400 horsepower. Also, all of these cars on this list aren't just 400 horsepower cars that handle like absolute crap. All of these cars have really good potential on top of having 400 horsepower. If you like this video, please be sure to hit the thumbs up button. It really helps out the video and get it in front of more people. And I want to know what you guys think. If you had, say, $10,000 to $20,000, what car would you buy that made over 400 horsepower? I know for me personally, I would probably pick the 03-04 Cobra because of its independent rear suspension and a lot of potential with the OEM supercharger, but let me know down in the comments below. I want to hear what you guys think. Be sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.